And I think there's one little formula I believe in so much. Perseverance plus passion plus pride equals win. I've often said pride in a person is ability to persevere. To respect all the competition, but fear none. Dedication and determination. The ability to have the drive and the desire at that crucial moment when you have to perform. You have that, you're gonna win.
I mean, if that doesn't get you excited about the college basketball season, I don't know what will. Welcome to Countdown to Game Day, covered by State Farm. Christine Williamson here next to. This is our first time working together. Sam Ravech, we're excited to be in the studio. I mean, it's a good college basketball season.
I mean, I'm stoked. It's already been a great season. By the way, excellent coverage in LA last week on the college football playoff. It was exciting to see Christine out there and the entire digital team. But now we're on to college basketball, right? And it's amazing to think, right? 8 more weeks, and that's it. That's the end of conference play. And we're already talking Selection Sunday and NCAA tournament.
We're going to have a fun 8 weeks right here in studio every single Saturday. Now, I mean, we haven't done this show yet this season, so we're going to get you up to speed with what's been going on in the college basketball season. Starting with something that we call today's starting five. Now, Kentucky is where we're starting this one because they're 1-3 in SEC play for the first time since the 1986-87 season. They had a 28-game home winning streak snapped by South Carolina. I mean, what has been going on with this Kentucky Wildcats team? Well,
look, I mean, Kentucky's been the biggest disappointment of the year this year. I think there's no question about it. You go from being ranked preseason number 4 to like dropping off the face of the earth, essentially. Kentucky's playing really bad defensively. They're not playing well as a unit. Oscar TSHIEBWE, the reigning National Player of the Year last year, the Wooden Award winner, he's doing his best. He's averaging a double-double. The guy's averaging 16 and 13 a game. There's not much more you can ask Oscar TSHIEBWE to do. The question for Kentucky is, can they get back to being healthy? Can they get some of those younger players playing as a unit? Oscar TSHIEBWE said the other day, look, if we're not going to play together as a unit, put in some of the walk-ons. I'll play with them because at least I know they're going to fight.
I do want to ask you this question because this is a crazy stat. UK hasn't won a postseason game in 1,400 days. What do you think the future of this program looks like?
It's not going to get any easier for Kentucky. I mean, they go to Thompson Bowling Arena today to take on a number 5 Tennessee team that ranks, in some metrics, the best defense in the entire country this year. They're holding opponents to, I think, 21% shooting from beyond the arc. Kentucky's a good 3-point shooting team. The problem for Kentucky is they're already 0-4 in quad 1 games, Christine. So they've already lost a lot of the opportunities that they have to build that NCAA tournament resume. And tension's starting to build. The players don't really like playing under those types of conditions. Usually you think Kentucky, you think, all right, this is a team that's going to be in the NCAA tournament. That's not a given this year.
Right. You mentioned that tension is starting to build. There's a lot of issues going on with that program behind the scenes also. There's a lot of articles out there. You can go read them. Let's move on to a team that is doing some exciting things on the basketball court. That is Kansas State. They're currently 15-1. 4-0 in the Big 12, which currently one of the best basketball conferences in the country. They've won 14 games all season last year, and they were picked to finish last. Okay?
Dead last.
In the strongest basketball conference. So what are you seeing out of this Kansas State team?
Kansas State is one of the biggest surprises for a good reason. We're just talking about Kentucky as one of the disappointments. Kansas State has been one of the most impressive teams, I think, in the entire country this year so far. Everybody underestimated Kansas State for a variety of different reasons. And everybody seemingly has underestimated MARKQUIS Nowell, who's been one of the most exciting players in the country. The guy had 0 Division I offers coming out of high school in New York. 0. Goes to Manhattan, Kansas. All of a sudden, Nowell's putting up 27 points and 10 assists a game in Big 12 play. It's just silly stuff that we're seeing. In the 2 ranked road wins last week against Texas and Baylor, MARKQUIS Nowell had more than 65 points and 20 assists in those 2 games. There are only 2 other Division I men's players to accomplish that feat in back-to-back games in the last 10 years. Those 2 players, John Morant and Trae Young.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the list. And MARKQUIS Nowell is now in rarefied air, too.
I do want to mention, you mentioned the fact that they beat ranked teams, Texas and Baylor. They also have TCU, which we're excited about today. Then they play Kansas. Do you feel like they'll be able, I mean, the Big 12, everybody beats up on everybody. They play everybody twice. Do you think that they're going to be able to maintain their success?
Yes and no. I think Kansas is the cream of the crop in the Big 12, and I think Kansas actually will separate this year in the Big 12. KJ Adams is playing like a beast right now, 9 straight games in double figures, and they have just a lot of really good complementary pieces. Bill Self is just an excellent coach. Kansas State is going to be up there at the top, but I think Kansas does separate.
Okay, let's talk about Alabama. Now, we know how Alabama's football season played out this year. Is Alabama a basketball school? They're currently 14-12, 4-0 in SEC play. What have you seen out of them?
Alabama, number 4 in the country. Where did the football team finish, by the way?
Not in the top 4.
They finished number 5. Right? Look, I'm not trying to throw shade here. Alabama and Nate Oates have built a basketball school down there in Tuscaloosa. It's been exciting to watch. They are just coming off a top 25 win against Arkansas on Wednesday. This is a team that beat number 1 ranked Houston, the only team to beat Houston this year. Brandon Miller is playing like the lottery pick that we all expected him to be at the start of the year. So if you're an Alabama student right now and you're walking on campus seeing Brandon Miller walking around, I would get his autograph now, because the guy ain't going to be on campus for like another couple of weeks. He's going to be gone. So
is it too early for us to start saying that Alabama is a basketball school and not a football school?
I don't think so. I mean, they had a disappointing year last year, and they lost their last 4 straight games. And I think that left a bad taste in the mouth of Nate Oates and this basketball program. They turned it around this year, and they're a basketball school. They play a really fun brand of basketball, in all seriousness. They're a fun team to watch.
Okay, you mentioned at the top of the show how we have 8 more weeks left in the college basketball season. There are currently no more unbeaten teams. So the last team standing was New Mexico, who lost on January 3rd. This is the quickest date in 5 years for every team to have a loss. So what does that mean about the college basketball landscape?
Parity, and parity. I mean, the 1979 Indiana Hoosiers can rest easy this year, knowing that they're the last team to complete the perfect season, and they got to rest easiest at the turn of the new year. So we almost didn't make it to 2023 with an unbeaten team. I think a lot of conference winners this year. You look across the Power 5 conferences, you see UCLA is doing really well out west. You see Clemson is 6-0 in the ACC. I really think that you're going to see some Power 5 teams and conference winners with like 3 and 4 losses this year.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for mentioning Clemson before I mentioned Clemson, because I'm sure everybody expected me to. But you know what? I decided to wear a Rock Chalk shirt just so that people didn't think I was that biased. Let's go to the Big 12 conference, because as I mentioned, this is one of the strongest conferences in college basketball. It's the toughest conference in NCAA so far, and it's not even close. Here's why. 9 of the 10 teams in the Big 12 are in the T50 of the net rankings. 8 of the 10 teams are in the 1030 in KenPom. So what's happening in the Big 12 conference?
Competition. And the Big 12 is the oldest conference in college basketball this year, and it's not even close. They've returned a lot of players. It's an experienced conference with teams that continue to compete and continue to play at the highest level. Look, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not even going to say it's likely to happen. But we could see, there are scenarios where the Big 12 gets 9, maybe 10 teams, all teams in the NCAA tournament. So that's Texas Tech, West Virginia struggling a lot this year. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible we could see a great chunk of the Big 12 make the tournament.
I mean, when you look at the Big 12 conference, just think about the last champions, right? You had Kansas, you had Baylor, and Tech made it to the championship in 2019, which a lot of people sometimes forget about. So the conference, not only very strong, but there's a lot of parity in the conference as well, right?
A lot of history, a lot of experience. And again, like we said, it's an old conference. A lot of these, you're seeing a lot of schools utilizing the transfer portal, and the Big 12 has, but you're also seeing a lot of teams and players transfer within the Big 12. So there's kind of jumping schools right now.
How weird is the transfer portal?
Strange.
That's exactly what causes all the parity.
Right.
So we're excited about all of the games that are happening today. Here's a quick look at them now. Sam mentioned Clemson. I'm going to bring up the fact that University of Miami is in the top 25. They're taking on NC State at 12 p.m. Eastern on ACC Network. You can also catch Kansas State and TCU going at it at 2 p.m. on ESPN2. And we are now joined by Seth Greenberg, who we're very happy to have on our show. Obviously, he'll be a part of game day. We got to talk about this college basketball season, right? There have been a few teams at number 1 already throughout the season. Do you recall a season where there's no clear-cut favorite at the top?
This year is a little bit different, but when you think about this year, think about the COVID year. Everyone got an extra year. Think about the transfer portal. Think about NIL. They're all different things. So all of a sudden, I think there are more good players at more schools, and no team has separated themselves. And that's just the way college basketball is going to be. It's hard to win on the road. The other guy's got 13 guys on scholarship. But there are some teams that are playing at a high level. A couple have been surprises. How about Purdue? They weren't even preseason top 25. All right, they're 1 or 2 in the country. Think about the Xavier team. Under Sean Miller really has taken a step forward, but they have 6 returning players. Houston, they are healthy once again. And I look at Houston a little bit like I looked at Baylor back in the day when they won that national championship. Maybe the best backcourt offensively, defensively in the country. And Marcus Sasser, to me, has a lot of Davion Mitchell in his game. So, look, I think it's good for college basketball. More good teams, more competitive games. One thing about college basketball, it never disappoints.
All right, Seth, you were talking about Xavier there for a second, and a team that was picked in the Big East that's kind of jumbled at the top right now. What do you like about what X is doing right now?
You know, when I look at the Xavier team, at Sean Miller, first of all, the style of play, he's playing at absolute warp speed, over 80 points a game. It's an experienced team. They've got 6 returning players. And then they added Suloy Boom, a dynamic guard from UTEP who can really score. But when you think about their team, it's that experience. It's Jack Nungy, who's a big who can step away from the basket. It's Kobe Jones, who kind of is a Swiss Army knife. He defends, he runs, he rebounds, he makes plays. Kunkel knocks down jumpers. They have versatility, they have depth, and offensively, Fremantle's ability at the 4 spot and his skill level makes him really hard to defend. I think this Xavier team is a very dangerous team and a team that's built for the NCAA tournament.
When you think about the preseason poll and what the top 25 looks like now, it's completely different, right? UNC not even in the top 25. They were number 1 in the preseason poll. When you look at the top 25 now, though, is there a dark horse that we should be paying attention to that might not be ranked?
That might not be ranked. Now, that's a little bit more difficult question. I mean, when you look at college basketball, think about teams that have been ranked and have not been ranked during the course of the season. I think Baylor might be a dark horse. There's a team that's outside of the top 25 right now, but they still have that great guard play. And Kenyatta George is going to be a terrific player. You put him, Adam Flagler together in that backcourt with C.J. Cryer, they still have a terrific backcourt. It's the front court that concerns me and their ability to defend the ball, but a team that's outside that, preseason we thought was going to be a really good team, I think that Baylor would be in that conversation.
All right, let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Kentucky. There's a cloud over Big Blue Nation right now. The panic meter for the fans, I think, is through the roof, Seth. But can Kentucky turn this thing around? Can they make the NCAA tournament this year?
Yeah, they can make the NCAA tournament because they're going to have opportunities. The great thing about playing in the SEC is the opportunities to have wins that enhance your resume. When you play in that league, almost each and every night you have a chance to win a game against the field. So that's a positive thing. Negative thing is until they come together as a team. And there was a play the other night that I thought, against South Carolina, that kind of manifested the problem with Kentucky. They come down, Xavier Wheeler gets a paint touch, kicks it out. C.J. Frederick knocks a jumper down. It's the middle of the second half. Forces South Carolina to call timeout. It's a 7-point game. C.J. Frederick looked like Jimmy Valvano looking to have someone hug him because you know what? He's walking off the court and there's no one there. Finally, a couple guys, come by. He's like reaching out, trying to dap him up a little bit. And those guys are not lost in the game. They're not lost in each other. They're not lost in winning. They're so self-absorbed. And look, I know the Kentucky kids. They're really good kids. But you know what? When you're at Kentucky, the amount of pressure that you're under, until they buy into each other and have great team trust, I'm not sure how much better they can get. I think they can get there. And the second thing is they've got to clean up what they're doing defensively. They're not guarding anyone. Their ball screen defense has not been good. Everyone talks about their offense, but really the bigger issue is on the defensive end. They've got to find a way to get stops. South Carolina, a team that has really struggled to score the ball, got any shot they wanted, any time they wanted. But when you're in the SEC, when you have Tennessee, when you have Alabama, when you have Auburn, when you have opportunities to get wins against the field, the opportunities are there. But having to come and play at Tennessee this weekend, I'm not sure they're getting healthy there.
All right, let's talk a little Big 12 basketball, right? I obviously look like I'm a Big 12 homer representing Kansas. Let's talk about Kansas State a little bit, taking on TCU tonight. Should we be buying the hype? Are they for real?
Oh, they're for real. There's no doubt about it. And, the job that Jerome Tang's done has been absolutely incredible. Think about this. 90% of their points come from juniors and seniors, but there are 2 dudes that are just a little bit different. Marquise Noel, last 3 games, 29 points, 10 assists, 50% from the 3. And then Keontae Johnson, the transfer from Florida. Remember now, before he had that heart ailment, he was preseason player of the year in the SEC, a 6'6" freak athlete, shooting 40 from the three, attacks the rim, scores at all three levels. Kansas State is for real.
Kansas State might be old, but Seth Greenberg keeps us young.
The best. The
so
best.
Much, Seth.
I'm faking my way through life.
That's the ball game. South Carolina hangs on and wins 71-68. The 28-game home winning streak is over.
Am I happy? No, I'm not happy. I would have liked to have won the game, but we didn't deserve to win it.
It's true. Cal has lost this team.
This sucks. There's no other way to say it. We got to be better. We got to be better than this, and that's on me.
It's never been worse for Cal than now.
Are we all disappointed? Yeah, you should be in there. We're all disappointed.
All right, it's now time for What If, covered by State Farm. So let's take a look at Houston, who's currently sitting at the #1 spot, similar to another Houston team. The last time the Cougars were #1 in the AP poll was the final poll of the 1982-83 season. The Cougars swept through the Southwest Conference schedule and were ranked #1 for the final 3 polls of that season. Riding a 26-game winning streak, they advanced to the 1983 National Championship game, where they fell 54-52 to Jim Valvano's NC State Wolfpack. So the question for you, Sam, what if Houston is primed for another tournament run?
Yeah, I know we're talking what if. I'll also ask the question, why not, right? Because the Houston Cougars are kind of set up for this run. You talk about what they did last year, going to the Elite Eight, went to the Final Four the year before that. Their win at #2 at the time, Virginia, I think is still one of the best wins on anybody's resume right now. And the stars are aligned, right? The men's Final Four is in Houston this year. So imagine you could have the Houston Cougars playing in the Final Four in front of a home crowd. I don't think you can say enough about what Kelvin Sampson has done so far in his time at Houston since arriving in 2014. The Cougars have won 3 of the last 4 AAC titles, and they're certainly primed for another really, really strong run this year.
I do want to ask you, because, I mean, that 1983 team featured guys like Clyde Drexler, Hakeem Olajuwon. Are there players that are that magnitude on that Houston squad?
Well, I mean, the problem for Houston also last year was they had some injuries. Tremont Mark is back. Marcus Sasser is back. They both had season-ending injuries last year. They're both back, averaging double figures. The Houston Cougars have the best scoring margin in the entire country right now at +23. So it's kind of by committee, but they have a lot of players back that are healthy this year, which helps.
All right, well, we'll see what happens with that Houston squad. Now, this weekend, in college basketball, we are honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Here is Anscape's Jesse Washington with what it means to live in Dr. King's legacy.
Dear Dr. Martin Luther King, we are living in your legacy, and your message endures in our game. On the court, we strive for your dream of brotherhood and unity. We fight in your spirit of resolve and commitment. We love each other. And from that love, we rise or stumble as one. But let us not forget that as you were beaten, jailed, and ultimately assassinated, the game denied Black equality. The powerful lined up against freedom before a few brave teams heeded your call to action. I believe that today, Dr. King, you'd warn us that we have not reached the mountaintop. Injustice remains. Your legacy is hope and belief, but also radical change. In the game behind the game, we still must overcome.
All right, it is now time for something that we like to call Who's Hoopin', where we take a look at the players in college basketball that are hooping.
Yep.
Okay, obviously there's a lot this season. We talked about the parity in college basketball. So let's start in Kansas State. We talked about how they were the real deal, and you mentioned Markquis Nowell. What are you seeing out of him at Kansas State?
A chip on his shoulder. I think the biggest thing for him, Markquis Nowell, 17 points a game. We talked about what he's doing, 27 points a game in Big 12 play. Here's my favorite thing about Markquis Nowell. His Twitter bio says, "Underestimate me so I can embarrass you." How about that, right?
I freaking love that.
I mean, he's, of course, we know he's undersized, but he plays with that chip on his shoulder. He really plays well with Keontae Johnson, as we heard Seth Greenberg talk about earlier. It's just really cool to watch a player like that. Comes out of New York. He's got that grit, that toughness that you see from a New York City undersized guard. So I really like that. I like the way he plays.
You mentioned the note earlier in the show. The only other two D1 men's players in the last 10 years to accomplish that in a 2-game stretch are Trae Young and John Morant. That being the fact that he had 65 points and dished out more than 20 assists in the wins over Texas and Baylor. Okay, Zach Edey out of Purdue. Purdue at one point ranked #1 in the country, so there's a reason for that.
No question about it. And you saw Purdue playing last night. You see opponents trying to double Zach Edey in the low post. That doesn't work because Purdue has a lot of shooters around him. So when Zach Edey gets doubled in the post, which happens a lot, he can use that size. I mean, he's obviously the tallest player in college basketball right now. 22 points a game, 13 rebounds a game. Can you imagine driving down the lane and seeing Zach Edey meeting you at the rim? Like, that would be like the scary, that must give players in the Big Ten nightmares. I mean, you see him meeting you at the rim, that's incredible. But yeah, Zach Edey also has more blocks than fouls this year. Last year, he got into foul trouble a little bit more often. This year, he's taking care of that. And I think that's a really big part of his game, staying on the floor.
Of course. All right, let's talk about KJ Adams at Kansas. I mean, we talked about how strong this Big 12 conference is. What is KJ Adams doing for Rock Chalk?
Coach Self has always kind of had a big position player in the low post that he can go to. Last year, it was David McCormack. 2019, we saw Dedrick Lawson as well. And now it's 6'7" KJ Adams. So he's not the traditional low post kind of big body guy that Kansas has had. And Coach Self was playing him on the perimeter for the most part up until November. 9 straight games for KJ Adams in double figures in the last 9, so he's playing a lot better. And I think he's really the X factor for this team that has lost quite a few players from last year's national championship team. KJ Adams, if you look at the stats from last year, he hardly played, and now he's averaging double figures, almost a double-double a game.
You mentioned that he hardly played. He also averaged last season 1.4 points per game. So far in the month of January this season, he's averaging about 12 field goal attempts per contest. All right, let's go to that basketball school of Alabama. What has Brandon Miller been doing for that team?
Brandon Miller is such an exciting player to watch for a number of reasons, but he's just so quick, and he has that size, right? 6'7", he shoots the ball 40% from beyond the arc. 19.1 points per game, leads Division I freshman, number 7 overall prospect right now for the 2023 draft. I think that's only going to go up even more. Alabama 4-0 in conference play for the second time since 1986, 1987. And the biggest reason has been Brandon Miller. Like I said, you want to get his autograph, get it now. Get a picture now. Brandon Miller is not going to be in Tuscaloosa for very long.
I want to talk about Drew Timme because he's one of my favorite players in college basketball. I feel like he's been here for 14 years. Right. We were talking about it a little bit off camera. It's because he's been balling since he was a freshman in college. What has he been doing for that Gonzaga team?
Consistency. I mean, Gonzaga's just been a team that's been there at the top. 22 points per game, ranks in the top 10 in all Division I basketball right now. Last game against BYU, which is always one of the most competitive games in the West Coast Conference for Gonzaga. Double-double, 19 points, 13 rebounds, 6 double-double this season. That's what Drew Timme gives you. And he's one of 3 players in Division I averaging 20 points per game, 60% from the field or better. He joined Zach Edey and Josh Cohen out of St. Francis in Pennsylvania for that.
Drew Timme also following me on Instagram because we met at the ESPYs 2 seasons ago. We're besties.
You guys are tight?
Friend of the show. We can actually have him on the show. I'll just hit him up. I'll just DM him. It's no biggie. Okay, and our producer just told me we're going to take, she's going to take me up on that. So yeah, I'll have to get him.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Soon. Like I said, friend of the show. We'll try to get him on the show very soon. Okay, let's talk about Oscar Tshiebwe because obviously big player in college basketball. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we've talked about it. Kentucky not doing as well this season, but Oscar Tshiebwe still doing it all on the court.
He is, and they need more than just Oscar Tshiebwe if they want to have success this season. He's the reigning Wooden National Player of the Year, 16 points a game, 13.1 rebounds a game. Kentucky just had their home game win streak, snapped with the loss to South Carolina. Of course, they go to Knoxville today, and I think this is a really big test and a big opportunity for a Kentucky team that has struggled. Kentucky, for as much as we've talked about their struggles and kind of how they have struggled defensively at times this year, Kentucky is a good offensive team. I mean, they shoot almost 40% from beyond the arc. The problem for them has been getting the ball inside to Oscar TSHIEBWE at the opportune moments and also getting back on defense. Tennessee today is one of the best defensive teams in the country.
Yeah, Tennessee also now has the third longest home game win streak.
Yeah.
Gonzaga and Auburn are right in front of them. So a tough task for Kentucky for sure. Do you feel like Kentucky is going to be able to turn their season around?
No, I don't actually. And I'm not, and this is not trying to rag on Kentucky. They have the talent to do so, but it just feels, and look, I'm a numbers guy. I like to go by what we see on paper. The issue with me for Kentucky this year has been more of a feel and more of an emotional thing.
Yeah.
Like you watch Kentucky play and it's like, this doesn't feel like Kentucky. Normally you watch Kentucky and it's like, this team's unstoppable. They're unbeatable. They have talent that nobody else has. And now with the transfer portal and everything, other teams have the same amount of talent as Kentucky. So it's about that hunger and that grit that I think Oscar TSHIEBWE has been talking about so much. This Kentucky team right now doesn't feel like they have that grit.
Okay, I want to get a little bit into the tea just because we have a couple more minutes to talk about some stuff. I saw that there was a possibility that Calipari might be leaving Kentucky. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of drama going on in that program. What do you think that means for the future of the program?
Well, I mean, there was a sign. Somebody was holding a sign that we saw in the game in South Carolina. It says, please go to Texas.
Right.
And the fan was asked to leave. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that, right? I mean, you got to have a little bit thicker skin than that. It's an issue right now. And Coach Cal does not like to be criticized.
Right.
I mean, he's had a lot of really successful teams and really good teams. So the question, I think, for Kentucky is going to be how long, and for Coach Cal, how long do we want to take this criticism? How long do I want to take it? Because he's going to have opportunities elsewhere. I think if Texas reached out, I would maybe see him going there.
Obviously, Chris Beard has left Texas, so they do have a vacancy there. And I did also see that there was a possibility of Kentucky wanting Scott Drew. So there's a lot of drama. Okay, let's take a look at today's games once again. As we mentioned, Kentucky at Tennessee, University of Miami at NC State, University of Miami once again in the top 25. Anything that you're looking at particularly in that game?
Well, let me just say this first, Christine. There's a game that's not on here that we were talking about. Duke and Clemson at 5 o'clock tonight. Clemson 6-0 in ACC play. The Tigers have never been 7-0 in ACC play in the history of the program, Christine. Duke's captain, also Jeremy Roach, is still out with that nagging toe injury. This is an opportunity for a Clemson team that has just been dying to have success in the ACC, and I see you're dancing.
Yeah, because, I mean, Clemson and Miami are just thriving right now, and I don't even have to force it like I do during the college football season, or at least have to do this last college football season. Okay, so before we go, we want to take a look at some of the craziest things that happened in college basketball in this past week. You start us off. What did you see?
This is the most nuttiest shot I think I've ever seen in college basketball. And it happened from Nebraska's Kendall Moriarty here. Shot clock winding down. I don't even know if you can call this a shot, Christine. It's more of like a heave.
Oh, my goodness.
It's insane. Nebraska, by the way, was a top 25 team earlier this year. They've struggled. Maybe it's shot like this that'll go down in the record books as the best shot in NCAA history.
You know what's also crazy? She didn't mean to do that.
No.
She wasn't trying to do that. That is sheer luck. It was a miracle. I love to see that.
And you see the score at the bottom there? It was 80-51.
I honestly wonder if she was trying to shoot the ball or if she was just trying to get rid of it.
Just get rid of it, I think. Take the shot clock violation.
Get away from me. So, okay, this is how we're going to end the show with mine. It's a little feel-good content.
There we go.
So, Iowa Hawkeye commit Ava Jones is back on the court after enduring an accident over the summer. She scored the first basket in their game the other night. Isn't that amazing?
Amazing. I love a feel-good story.
Obviously, you know, not really moving that much, still recovering from her accident, but the fact that she was able to get out there, I'm sure, is huge for her. And hopefully we'll be able to see her later in the season actually playing some solid basketball.
Yeah, and we talk about how basketball is such a great sport as well for healing.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And that's just a really cool story. For her to be out there, I think, with her team, that's got to feel really good.
This is why we love sports.
Yeah.
What is the number one thing that you're looking forward to today in today's games?
Can Kentucky beat Tennessee on the road in Thompson-Boling Arena in, an hour?
Yeah. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
They're not going to turn it around this season. We'll see what happens. The Blue Bloods have been struggling.
We'll be back here next week.
It's not about the Blue Bloods. It's all about the New Bloods, including, as we know, Clemson and Miami. Also Rock Chalk. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, thank you guys for watching Countdown to Game Day, covered by State Farm. We'll see you next week.